let communism slip away. In a drastic move, Gorbachev's betrayers held him prisoner, an attempted coup that shocked the world and rocked the foundation of Soviet government. But with Boris Yeltsin and the Soviet people united in opposition to the coup, communism goes up in flames, counting down the final hours of the Second Russian Revolution.
In fact, there was never a conspiracy. Nothing had been worked out. Nothing. We just met the day before on the 17th.
Unexpectedly, on August 17th, Prime Minister Pavlov called a cabinet meeting to discuss the draft Union Treaty. Just Pavlov and his deputies. Pavlov was very critical. He said, "I don't care what they say. That treaty won't work. They're playing political games. These games will lead to trouble."
A treaty transforming the Soviet Union was to be signed on August 20th. The treaty removed power from the center and handed it to the republics. Now, at the last moment, Prime Minister Pavlov and his cabinet were calling the carefully negotiated agreement into question.
I was driving home. Gorbachev called me in my car from his vacation home in the Crimea. I couldn't get a word in. He was swearing his head off. I tried to tell him I wasn't alone. Normally, when he calls my car, we stopped and the driver gets out and I stay alone. But my wife was with me. The driver got out. I gestured for her to follow. Gorbachev was swearing away. I tried to get him to tone it down, because my wife could hear. I said, "Please, Mikhail Sergeyevich, don't interrupt," he said. Gorbachev said, "Don't you understand? If there's no treaty, there'll be civil war. The state is falling apart."
Meanwhile, Prime Minister Pavlov made his way to a KGB compound south of Moscow. There he joined KGB Chief Khrushchev, Chief of Staff to the President Boldin, and the Minister of Defense, Yazov. The interviews that follow are taken from the prosecutor's interrogations of those arrested after the coup.
We talked about the Union Treaty, to be signed in 2 days. We were all sure it meant the end of the Soviet Union.
We decided we needed a state of emergency. The economy was disintegrating. We had to avert famine and the collapse of the state.
What were you planning to tell Gorbachev?
First, we wanted to tell him our views, then to get his opinion. We wanted to say to him, we have to take steps to stabilize the situation. Those steps may be unpopular, but we have no alternative. In any case, we believe the people will back our actions.
We felt Gorbachev was no longer able to cope with his roles as an active statesman. It had become increasingly apparent that either he had lost control or he was simply burned out. Then we decided to go and see him.
See who?
Mikhail Gorbachev. We chose the team we would send.
They decided that a delegation should fly to see Gorbachev in the Crimea the next day. After the coup, Gorbachev described what happened.
I went over to invite them in. They'd already gone into my office. I wasn't used to such conduct, such familiarity. They were led by the head of my presidential staff, Bolden.
We deliberately chose Bolden because we needed someone who the president really trusted. Gorbachev trusted him. Bolden could persuade him that the situation really required these steps.
Bolden's involvement shocked them both, especially Raisa. He was a close family friend as well as a colleague. They went way back to 1978, when Gorbachev came to Moscow.
I said I wouldn't resign or put my name on their decree. I said, who has sent you here? I'm not a fool. They said, we've set up a committee. I asked, what committee? Who were the members? As they listed the names, I began writing down their names on a scrap of paper that was on my desk.
After the group had left, Mikhail Sergeyevich came out. He looked shaken. He was holding a piece of paper.
The last name on Gorbachev's list was Anatoly Lukyanov, the Speaker of the Supreme Soviet, the second most powerful man in the Soviet hierarchy.
Lukyanov was one of the names. His name was in lowercase and small letters. Next to his name was a question mark. We weren't sure if he was on the committee or not.
I couldn't help putting a question mark next to his name. We'd known each other since college. For 40 years. I knew his position was crucial. He was chairman of the Supreme Soviet. If he had publicly opposed the coup, it would have collapsed.
The delegation departed, leaving Gorbachev a prisoner in his own compound. Chernayev ran across to Gorbachev's villa.
Raisa couldn't believe it. She said, what nerve. They just marched in. They never even said hello.
When we realized we were under arrest, and when we discovered who the conspirators were, we were terribly hurt. We felt bitterly betrayed.
So then we put extra guards around Gorbachev's house. We completely isolated him. Then we cut off all his phones. We did that so that we'd have a few clear days to impose order.
My husband has 8 or 10 phones. I don't remember exactly how many. He tried them one by one, but they were all dead. Even the military hotline. We have a military hotline in each of our homes. That phone is kept under a cover. No one is allowed to touch it, even to dust it. He took off the cover, lifted the handset, and it was dead. Then we knew. That was that. That was that.